Be careful who you bury. They just might rise louder than your lies. My dear chosen ones, let's not sugarcoat this. They messed with the wrong quiet person. They picked the calm one in the corner, not realizing that still waters run deep. And when they rise, they flood everything in their path. They mistook your restraint for weakness. They mistook your dignity for defeat. But now they're choking on every assumption they ever made about you. And trust me, it's not justice whispering this time, it's roaring. The tide didn't just turn, it flipped like a table in a room full of liars. The script didn't just change, it got shredded, rewritten, and broadcasted louder than their cover stories ever were. What happened? The one they thought had no defenders now has someone speaking so loud, so bold, and so unapologetically that every fake story ever told about you is being torched on arrival. Let me say this plainly. Everything flipped overnight, and it wasn't luck. It was long overdue. You were never supposed to stay the underdog. That was just their favorite illusion, their way of staying comfortable while you sat in silence. But what they didn't count on was the plot twist, the kind that doesn't just expose lies, it exposes the people who benefited from them. The kind where someone with status, influence, and receipts starts asking the questions you were never allowed to ask. And they're not asking politely. They're pressing, loudly, publicly, fearlessly. And now your enemies? They're unraveling. The same ones who once mocked you with smug faces and behind-the-scenes smirks are in damage control mode, fumbling with their stories, suddenly allergic to the same attention they used to crave. Because now, someone with a platform they respect has decided you're worth defending. And that changes everything. Before we dive deeper, if this message is already hitting somewhere real, don't just watch in silence. Support this movement by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That small action helps us continue pouring energy, truth, and bold, life-shifting content straight into your feed. Every like fuels the mission. Every subscribe keeps the fire going. If you want more content that speaks directly to your situation with zero fluff and full power, show some love so we can keep showing up for you. So, to the chosen ones watching this, hear me. This is what it looks like when the underestimated becomes untouchable. This is what happens when someone finally steps into the fire, not to save you, but to expose the ones who lit it in the first place. You're not watching a rescue. You're watching a reckoning. You're witnessing what it feels like when every fake alliance, every manipulative smear, and every slander campaign built on your silence gets torched by truth, the kind that doesn't flinch. You ever wonder why they were so loud when you were defenseless, but now they're quiet when someone else speaks on your behalf? Because they never feared you. They feared someone like this stepping in, someone with power, someone untouchable, someone whose word weighs more than their web of lies. And now that someone is here, they're not playing nice, they're pulling receipts. And for those of you who have been sitting in silence, wondering if anyone would ever see through the mask your enemies wore, the answer is yes. Not only did someone see, they're talking, and their voice is cutting through the noise like a blade. Let me remind you of something. Being chosen doesn't always look like being celebrated. Sometimes it looks like being isolated, misquoted, underestimated, until the shift happens. And the shift? It just happened. The narrative flipped, the rooms they locked you out of. Your name is echoing inside them now, not as a footnote, but as the feature. This isn't about revenge. This is about clarity. And clarity hits harder than any revenge ever could. Your enemies aren't nervous because they care about what they did. They're nervous because someone who matters finally cares about what they did. This isn't their conscience waking up. This is their reputation collapsing under the weight of truth. And chosen one, yes you, let this fuel you. Let it remind you that silence isn't surrender and solitude isn't weakness. You endured storms that would have broken louder people. You carried your truth without needing to drag others through the mud. And now, the mud is drying up. The truth is hardening, and you're standing tall while they scramble for cover. People love to ask, why now? Why is someone suddenly defending you? Why is the narrative changing so fast? Here's the answer, because it was never about timing. It was about pressure, and pressure finally cracked their performance wide open. They built their fake stories with confidence, and now every lie is collapsing like cheap scaffolding. They thought this day would never come. They were wrong. The headline isn't their power anymore. The headline is your resilience. The witness isn't their inner circle anymore. The witness is someone louder than their lies. And the evidence? It's everything they thought they'd buried. Chosen one, the game just changed, and you didn't have to lift a finger. The truth came swinging on your behalf. Get ready, because this isn't the ending. This is the beginning of a spotlight they can't dodge, and a truth that won't shut up. Let's talk about it. And to every real one watching, yes, you, the chosen one, this moment is more than just content, it's confirmation. If you've felt the shift, if you know deep down that everything flipped overnight, and somebody out there is finally speaking what you've lived in silence, then don't scroll past it. Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and drop a 77 in the comments if you know exactly what this flip feels like. Show your support through super thanks if this energy is exactly what's been missing from your feed. Stick with us, because what you're about to hear next, it'll hit like a mirror. And if you're truly chosen, you'll know these aren't just signs. They're your story in plain sight. Let's get into it. Number 1. They mocked your silence. Now they're scrambling under someone else's megaphone. They thought you had no backup. Now they're drowning in the noise of a voice they can't mute. They laughed when you had no armor, but now they're choking on the sound of someone else's sword. My dear chosen ones, how quickly the tables spin when the silence starts talking. How bold they were when they thought no one would step up for you. How loud their laughter rang when they believed you were standing there, unarmed, unguarded, and unworthy of protection. They dragged your name like it was currency and bet on your isolation like it was a sure win. They paraded their disrespect like a badge of honor, mocking you with confidence, convinced that nobody would ever check them. But guess what? Someone just did. Let's call it what it is. They were fearless in your absence because they thought you had no presence behind you. Your silence, they saw it as surrender. Your calm as weakness. Your boundaries as emptiness. But you weren't empty. You were full of fire, just holding it back. And now that fire didn't come from you, it came from someone who stepped into the room with nothing to prove and everything to expose. You see, when people think you're alone, they don't hold back. They test your limits. They poke at your peace. They try to see how far they can go before you break. And you didn't. You held your ground in the middle of storms you never started. You watched quietly as they performed their cruelty like it was theater. But now the audience has changed, and someone just walked into the front row who's not clapping for the show. They're shutting it down. Let's break this down for the ones still healing. They weren't scared of you because they thought your voice had no weight. But now, someone with real power, someone they can't manipulate, someone they can't charm, someone who doesn't need applause, has stepped forward and said, enough. And that one voice? It's shaking the very structure they built their fake stories on. The ones who laughed at you in private are now panicking in group chats. The ones who joked about your pain are suddenly rewriting history, scrambling for sympathy they never gave you. Why? Because it's not just your truth out in the open anymore. It's your truth with a megaphone. And it's being spoken by someone who doesn't owe you anything. which makes it even harder for them to spin. Let me speak directly to the chosen ones right now. You don't have to fight for your voice when the right one shows up to amplify it. The person stepping in for you didn't come to play nice. They came to shake the room. And now the same people who once fed off your silence are sweating bullets under the weight of truth they can't dismiss. And no, this isn't about guilt. It's never guilt. These people aren't sorry. They're scared. Scared of being exposed. Scared that someone with more credibility than their entire crew just pulled out the flashlight. And that flashlight, it's pointed right at every lie, every manipulation, every moment they thought would stay hidden forever. And here's the part that should inspire you. You didn't lift a single finger. The power of being chosen isn't always in the noise you make. It's in the storm that follows the truth you carry. You were never alone. You were never weak. You were strategic silence in a world that thrives on chaos. And now that silence has been replaced by a voice so loud they can't unhear it. The people who once felt untouchable are now fragile. They're deleting texts. They're re-editing their stories. They're suddenly interested in being neutral, but the damage is already done. Because the person defending you, they're not here to clean up the mess. They're here to call it what it is. The trial they thought you'd never survive. You're not even the one on the stand anymore. They are, and the spotlight is real. The fear in their eyes isn't regret, it's realization. The realization that their version of events is crumbling and someone who actually matters is watching it fall apart, piece by piece. So if you've ever wondered, will anyone ever speak up for me? This is your sign. Not only are they speaking up, they're flipping the table, and the best part, they're not defending you out of pity. They're doing it because the truth is just too loud to ignore now. And you're not just being defended, you're being vindicated. So stand tall, chosen one. Let them sweat, let them spin, let them panic. You've earned your peace, and now someone else is making sure you finally get to keep it. Let's keep going. The shift has only just begun. Number 2. One voice with real power. Just dismantled their whole performance. You didn't need a crowd, just one voice loud enough to shatter the silence. They had an army of bystanders. You had one truth teller, and that was enough to break the whole illusion. My dear chosen ones, let's set this record straight. You were never looking for cheerleaders. You didn't want a pity parade. You didn't need everyone to repost your pain, rally in your defense, or cry in your comment section. You weren't waiting on a crowd. You were waiting on courage, and courage rarely comes in groups. It comes from one person who refuses to stay silent while everyone else looks away. And now, that one voice has arrived, and the shift is undeniable. You see, they thought they were safe in numbers. That's why they were so bold. They had a pack mentality, confident that the more people ignored you, the more power they had to rewrite the truth. The silence of the crowd became their camouflage, and in that echo chamber, your voice was treated like static. You spoke, but they tuned it out. You stood tall, and they pretended not to see it. They nodded along behind the scenes, but left you hanging in public. They watched you get torn apart and called it not their business. But what they didn't realize is this: silence doesn't stay safe forever. All it took was one voice with backbone, one voice with status, one voice that didn't come to tiptoe, but to tell the truth with its chest. And the moment that voice spoke up, everything changed. The walls they built around your name started cracking. The lies they passed around like inside jokes began to sound ridiculous. The people who were oh so comfortable staying neutral are now shifting nervously in their seats, because someone finally said the thing they all knew but were too scared to admit. Leave them alone. Simple words, sharp impact. That one sentence, delivered by the right person at the right time, carried more force than all the whisper campaigns they used to bury your name. That one statement, It held the weight of every silent injustice you endured. And it exploded through the silence like a fire alarm in a room full of liars. Chosen ones, hear this loud. You were never ignored because you lacked a voice. You were ignored because you were surrounded by cowards. But now a voice that can't be dismissed is speaking. And the ripple effect, it's collapsing every false alliance, every fake witness, and every neutral bystander who thought they'd never have to pick a side. You didn't beg for this. You didn't chase it. You never once lowered yourself to their level to get validation. You kept walking when it felt like no one had your back. You carried your dignity like armor, even when people treated your silence like weakness. But the truth is, you were never weak. You were patient, strategic, focused. You didn't move with noise. You moved with discipline. And now, your stillness is speaking louder than ever, through the mouth of someone whose voice they can't ignore. You want to know what real power looks like? It looks like someone entering the scene late, with no need for drama, no desire for clout, and instantly making everyone involved start rewriting their statements. It looks like one person saying what needed to be said, clearly, loudly, unapologetically, while the room shifts uncomfortably. That's what's happening now. And it's not because the facts changed. It's because the volume did. You never needed 1,000 retweets. You didn't need a stage full of allies. You needed someone with a platform, with credibility, with guts, and now you have it. That one voice is doing what the crowd never did, telling the truth without fear. They're not sugarcoating. They're not playing it safe. They're holding a mirror up to everything your enemies tried to hide. And suddenly, those who once laughed at your pain are silent, not from guilt, but from panic. Because here's the twist, you weren't the only one watching. Someone else saw what you endured, someone with access, someone with reach. And while they stayed quiet for a time, they were never blind. They were gathering clarity. And now they've entered the conversation not to start drama, but to end the narrative that painted you as the villain. And let's be real, that truth hits harder than any revenge ever could. This isn't just defense, it's disruption, it's a full reset. The narrative is no longer in their hands, and that terrifies them. Because the moment the truth walks into the room with a mic and a name, the lies start running for cover, the energy shifts, the alliances fracture, and all the power they built on groupthink evaporates. Chosen ones, this moment belongs to you. You never needed a crowd to validate your truth. Crowds are loud, but often useless. They move with the wind. They clap for what's trending. But one real voice, it can level everything fake in a single sentence. And now that voice is here, speaking for you, standing beside you, turning every dark corner where you were misrepresented into a stage where the truth can no longer be silenced. Let's keep going. The crowd wasn't the power, you were. Number 3. They got comfortable crossing lines until someone with authority drew one. They played bold when no one was watching. Now they're wilting under a spotlight. They can't escape. Abuse always feels brave until the wrong person sees it. My dear chosen ones, you were never weak. They were just comfortable. Comfortable mistreating you. Comfortable mocking you. Comfortable twisting the truth because in their minds, no one was ever going to hold them accountable. And let's be real, they didn't just push the limits, they shattered them. They danced on your dignity like it was their playground, thinking they'd never have to answer for a single thing they did. You became their punching bag. Not because you were the problem, but because you were the easiest one to blame when their own mess got too loud. They picked you because you were steady, because you were quiet, because you had the nerve to move with grace when they were moving with venom. But that grace, they read it wrong. They confused your peace for permission, and that's the mistake they'll never recover from. They thought you were unprotected. That's why they were bold. That's why they laughed in rooms you weren't in. That's why they pushed you to the edge. Not for justice, not for reason, but for sport. Because no one was watching, or so they thought. But here's what changed. Someone finally is. Someone with weight, someone with reach, someone who doesn't blink in the face of conflict. And most importantly, someone with nothing to gain from protecting the lie and everything to lose if they stay silent now. That one shift, it turned their playground into a courtroom, and now they're the ones walking on eggshells. They were fearless when you were alone. Now they're cautious because someone with authority is paying attention. The smirks are gone. The passive-aggressive jokes have stopped. The confidence has dried up. You know why? Because they're not afraid of you. They're afraid of being seen through someone else's eyes. And that's exactly what's happening. Let's talk about what that does to someone like them. When a person thrives on deception and manipulation, their biggest weapon is secrecy. The moment someone with influence enters the room and sees through the facade, the whole game collapses. That's where they are right now, in collapse mode. They're backtracking, rewriting narratives, trying to play neutral like they weren't the ringleader. But the energy doesn't lie. The shift in their behavior, that's panic in disguise. And here's the beauty of it. You didn't have to say a word. The same silence they used to weaponize against you has now become their worst nightmare because someone else filled it with truth. Loud truth, public truth, inescapable truth. And it's not whispers in the corner anymore. It's confrontation with clarity. Chosen ones, this is what vindication feels like in real time, not always explosive. Sometimes it's quiet observation by the right person at the right moment. Someone powerful enough to matter and sharp enough to see what others ignored. And once they see, they don't unsee. Once they hear, they don't unhear. And once they speak, the room changes. The whole power dynamic collapses. They thought the silence meant immunity, but it never did. It meant timing. It meant restraint. And now that restraint is over. Someone's eyes have landed on the damage, and they don't tolerate this kind of mess. This new energy, it doesn't let lies breathe. It doesn't let abuse hide. And it doesn't let chosen ones keep getting stepped on just because they didn't clap back. And now they're scrambling, not because they feel bad, but because their world just got smaller. Every fake laugh, every dig, every stunt they pulled while pretending to be innocent, it's all under review. They know it. You know it. And the one defending you definitely knows it. This isn't gossip. This is exposure. This is a reckoning in motion. They used to own the space because no one questioned their performance. But now they're being watched by someone who sees straight through it. And the way they move has changed. Body language, nervous, eye contact, avoidant, energy, office. Because the heat they once directed at you is now sitting heavy on their own necks. This is the moment they never prepared for. They assumed your silence was permanent. They assumed your isolation was forever. But what they didn't see coming was a voice louder than theirs entering the picture. And now, they don't control the room anymore. That control has shifted. And the shift? It's loud, it's public, and it's permanent. So to every chosen one who endured their chaos in silence, understand this. Your silence never meant surrender. It meant strategy. And now your strategy is playing out like a masterpiece. You stayed composed while they crumbled in private. And now that someone powerful is watching, their fake confidence is dissolving faster than their excuses. They used to laugh because they thought no one would believe you. Now they're quiet because someone they believe in is believing you. That's the part they can't stomach. That's the part they didn't plan for. And that's why the tables didn't just turn. They flipped so hard, the whole house shook. Chosen one, They're not just being exposed. They're being forced to face the reality that their cruelty was never invisible. It was just waiting for the right eyes to find it. And those eyes, they're here now, and they're not looking away. Let's keep going. It gets even louder from here. Number 4. They labeled you a liar until the receipts came from a source they couldn't touch. They called you a liar until the truth showed up with a megaphone and a file folder. They weaponized your silence, but somebody just turned the volume up and dropped receipts they never saw coming. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the weight of truth. Not the kind you scream to be heard, but the kind that shows up fully loaded and doesn't ask for permission to speak. The kind of truth that doesn't need to be defended by arguments, tears, or explanations. The kind that walks in the room and shuts everything down without saying a word. That's exactly what just happened for you. They called you a liar with confidence, over and over, straight-faced, polished, practiced. They didn't flinch while assassinating your character, and they didn't do it alone. No, they came with backup. Fake witnesses, staged concern, gaslight tactics so refined it made people question what they once knew about you. They had one goal: to erase your credibility before you even had a chance to speak. And let's be real, for a while they had the upper hand. Why? Because you weren't playing dirty. You weren't scrambling to defend yourself. You weren't collecting screenshots or staging drama to win sympathy. You held your silence like armor, and they twisted that into guilt. They made your peace look suspicious. They spun your composure into proof of deceit. They bet on your silence and thought it meant victory. But here's the thing about being chosen. You don't chase justice. Justice finds you. And this time, it didn't whisper. It roared. Because out of nowhere, someone walked in carrying the very receipts you didn't even know existed. Not hearsay, not opinions, cold, documented, undeniable proof. Proof that punched holes in every version of their story. And the best part? You didn't even know it was coming. They thought they buried the truth so deep it would never surface. What they didn't realize is that somebody else was watching. Someone who had access. Someone who didn't need to guess or assume. Someone who saw everything they tried to keep in the dark and decided it was time to flip the switch on all of it. Emails, voice notes, screenshots, time-stamped facts, witnesses who weren't bought or manipulated, just quiet observers who finally got tired of the lies. This wasn't emotional defense. This was a forensic takedown. Every smug smirk they wore while calling you delusional, gone. Every fake apology they gave to look clean, exposed. Every "I don't know what really happened" shrug, obliterated. Now, let's pause and ask the obvious question. Why now? Why is this happening all of a sudden? Because truth doesn't operate on your enemy's timeline. It waits, it watches, it builds momentum while they get comfortable. And when the moment is right, it walks in undeniable and undeniable and leaves no room for their edits. And chosen ones, this is where your real power starts to shine. Because you didn't clap back, you didn't beg for people to believe you, you didn't resort to dirty tactics just to survive. You waited, and while you waited, your character was building your case for you. And when the right person showed up with the receipts, your truth hit like thunder. Now those who called you a liar, they're rewriting their stories like authors caught in plagiarism. They're scrambling to delete, explain, rebrand. But it's too late. The evidence is louder than their edits. The shame they tried to hand you has boomeranged back into their own lap. They didn't just get caught, they got caught by someone they can't discredit. And here's the wildest part of all. You never had to lift a finger. The same truth they buried is now doing all the talking. The justice you deserved is showing up with screenshots and witness logs. The receipts they prayed would never surface are being printed in high definition, and there's nothing they can do to stop it. No gaslighting tactic can survive this. No crocodile tears can compete with hard proof. No fake empathy can rewrite what's been exposed in full color. They're not quiet because they've changed. They're quiet because they've been cornered. The truth just pulled the rug out from under their performance, and the mask fell off so fast they didn't even have time to blink. So to every chosen one who's ever been labeled a liar just because you didn't have evidence at the time, this is your moment. You were never lying. They were always hoping no one would prove you right. But the proof came anyway, and it came at full volume. Now you get to watch in peace as everything they built on deception crumbles beneath them, not because you fought them, not because you exposed them, but because truth has a way of exposing itself, and this time it chose you as the reason. So sit back, chosen one. The evidence has entered the chat, and it's louder than every lie they ever told. Let's keep going. It only gets better from here. Number 5. The person they idolized just called them out without flinching. The one they idolized just called them out, and now their whole persona's in free fall. They played God in the room until their favorite disciple finally named them the devil. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about that moment. That glorious, jaw-dropping, air-sucking out of the room kind of moment. The moment when the person they revered, the one whose opinion they clung to like a lifeline, finally looked them dead in the eye and said what everyone else was too afraid to say. You're the problem. Not you, chosen one. Them. Loud. Director. Public. No euphemisms. No sugarcoating. No chance to spin it. And just like that, the entire illusion shattered. For so long, they strutted around untouched, unchallenged, untouchable. They built their little empire on perception, power, and manipulation. They didn't have facts. They didn't need them. They had status. They had charisma. They had everyone wrapped around their well-rehearsed version of events. People believed them not because the story made sense, but because no one powerful enough had ever questioned it. Until now. Now someone with real presence, someone whose opinion actually shapes minds, finally stood up. And not quietly. Not in some side conversation or half-hearted DM. No, they said it out loud, in front of the very audience that once applauded the lie. You're the problem, not them. Let that sink in. This was the person they worshipped, not in a spiritual way, but in the only way people like that worship anything, through influence and image. They sought this person's approval like air. Their entire sense of power was rooted in being aligned with someone credible, someone respectable, someone feared. So when that someone finally turned around and held up a mirror, they didn't just feel exposed, they felt stripped. Because when that kind of voice speaks, people listen, and the room froze. You could feel it. The same people who used to nod along to every fake tear, every twisted narrative, every finger-pointing performance, they went silent. Not out of confusion, out of clarity. Suddenly, all those half-believable lies didn't sound so convincing anymore. All those victim performances started to look like bad acting in a cancelled show. The spell was broken. Because one voice with credibility crushed years of deception in a single sentence. And let's talk about you, chosen one. You didn't have to beg for that moment. You didn't stage it. You didn't force your way into the conversation or drag your pain around like a trophy. You stayed grounded, and because you did, someone else finally saw what they were never meant to ignore. You didn't demand a defender. The truth attracted one. And this truth teller, they're not playing it safe. They're not dancing around feelings or protecting egos. They're naming patterns, exposing cycles, and making it very clear the villain in the story was never the one being accused. It was the one doing the accusing all along. Now watch what happens next. The person who used to dominate the room with their lies, they're spiraling, because their influence was a house of cards built on borrowed credibility, and the person they borrowed it from just walked away. Worse, they didn't just walk away. They pulled the curtain. Now, every move they make is being second-guessed. Every conversation they had in secret is being re-examined. Every person they manipulated is sitting there connecting dots they once chose to ignore. That power they held over people, it's leaking fast, and no amount of charm or crisis control can stop it now. Chosen ones, hear this. You didn't need revenge. You needed a voice that couldn't be bought. And now you have it. That voice is cutting through lies like a blade, and it's doing what your silence alone could never do. It's dismantling the illusion from the inside out. What makes this even more poetic? They tried so hard to keep that voice out of the narrative. They didn't want this person to know the truth. They avoided the conversation, dodged the questions, carefully controlled what was seen and said. But truth has a funny way of sneaking in, and once it does, it refuses to be silenced. This is what real accountability looks like, not a whisper behind closed doors, but a loud confrontation from someone they once leaned on. And now, they can't twist the story. They can't manipulate the messenger. They can't pretend it's just drama, because the person calling them out doesn't need attention. They already have it. And you didn't have to utter a word. That's the power of being chosen. Let's keep going, because the unraveling isn't over. Number 6, your reputation is being rebuilt in rooms. They thought you'd never enter. They shut you out. But now your name's being defended in rooms they thought were safe to slander you in. They closed the door on you, but forgot truth doesn't knock, it walks in. My dear chosen ones, let's get something straight. Being locked out doesn't mean you lost. It just means they feared what you could shift if you got inside. And now, the very rooms they banned you from are where your name is being spoken loudest. Not in slander, but in strength. Not in whispers, but with weight. They thought they were slick, didn't they? Pretending it was about boundaries or maturity, when really they were building circles of control, keeping you out because the truth you carried was too inconvenient for their fake unity. While they smiled in public, they were assassinating your character in private. Casual conversations, coded sarcasm, half-lies dressed as concern. That's how cowards operate. They attack when you're not there to defend yourself. But chosen one, let this settle in your bones. You didn't need to be in the room to be respected in it. You didn't need to hear the conversations to shift their direction. Why? Because someone else heard it. Someone who matters. Someone who finally got sick of watching your name be tossed around like it had no worth. And they stepped in, uninvited, unapologetic, unshakable. You were never just excluded. You were targeted, strategically. They didn't just leave you off the guest list. They buried your reputation beneath rehearsed stories. They used your absence as a shield, thinking it meant you were outnumbered, outvoiced, irrelevant. But now the same rooms they felt safe disrespecting you in have turned ice cold, because someone just lit a match of truth in the middle of their performance. It's poetic, because while they were mocking your silence, someone with more reach was preparing a response. Not for likes, not for drama, but because they saw through it all. They heard the way your name was handled, and something in them snapped, not emotionally but morally. They realized what was being done wasn't just petty, it was calculated character assassination. And now they're speaking for you, where you were silenced. Let that hit. Your name is being protected in places you were erased from. People who never gave you a chance to speak are now hearing the truth from someone they can't ignore. And the most beautiful part? You didn't have to explain yourself. You didn't have to beg for understanding. You just had to endure, because endurance builds evidence. And now that evidence is being presented by someone who has the status, the clarity, and the courage to shut the lies down. To all the chosen ones who've ever wondered if the truth would ever find its way into the spaces that slandered you, it already has. The twist? They didn't see it coming. They assumed your silence was submission. They thought your absence meant defeat. But while they were celebrating your removal, someone was watching and listening and waiting for the right moment to correct the entire narrative. And now, the conversations are shifting. The fake alliances are getting uncomfortable. The people who once giggled at your expense are suddenly quiet, not because they grew a conscience, but because they're being confronted by someone who doesn't play the politics they hide behind. Someone with nothing to lose and everything to say. And the silence? It's thick now, awkward, heavy, because the truth has entered rooms it was once banned from, and it didn't come gently. It came like a gust, no warning, no filter, and every smirk, every fake agreement, every "we don't know the full story" shrug is being exposed for what it was. Complicity, cowardice, groupthink disguised as neutrality. But here's what you need to know, chosen one. You don't owe those rooms your presence. Your character is speaking louder now than your voice ever had to. And that's the beauty of alignment. When the right person sees through the fog, you don't have to plead your case. They see it, they feel it, they can't unsee the manipulation, and once they speak up, the whole atmosphere shifts. You were never the problem, you were the proof. And now, someone with influence is putting that proof on display. They're not defending you because you begged. They're defending you because truth always echoes louder in a room full of liars. And that echo, it's deafening right now. So let them squirm. Let them rewrite their version. Let them pretend they never meant harm. The real ones are watching. The truth is moving, and you, dear chosen one, are being covered, not just emotionally, but strategically. Let this fuel you. Your name was never erased. It was just being reintroduced in the right voice, at the right moment, in the right room. You didn't need their access. You were the story the room needed to hear. They just didn't know it yet. And now that the truth has entered, they'll never forget it. Let's keep going. The flip is far from finished. Number 7. The enablers are suddenly switching sides, but don't confuse that with loyalty. The fence-sitters are flipping, but don't mistake panic for loyalty. When the heat turns up, even the fake ones start acting like they always cared. Don't fall for the performance. My dear chosen ones, this part might sting a little. Not because it's new, but because it's familiar. Let's talk about the ones who stayed silent while you were getting dragged, disrespected, and dismantled. The ones who watched it happen, shrugged, and convinced themselves that silence was neutrality. Let's be clear, they weren't neutral. They were just quiet enablers with front row seats. You remember them. They were never the ones pulling the trigger, but they gladly handed over the ammunition. They watched your name get lied on, your character get assassinated, and your peace get shattered. And they said nothing. Worse, they whispered their support behind the scenes, but in public, crickets. Not a word, not a whisper, not even a raised eyebrow when things got out of hand. Because deep down, they didn't want to lose their seat at the table with the ones attacking you. And now, everything flipped overnight. The energy changed. Someone with real weight just stepped in, loud, visible, powerful, and now those same spectators are sprinting to switch jerseys mid-game. You've seen it. Suddenly they're in your comments, reposting your quotes, dropping vague apologies in your DMs like, "Hey, just wanted to say I always believed in you." Really? Where was that belief when you were alone in the storm, screaming into the void, getting gaslighted by the same people they were clapping with? This isn't a redemption arc. This is a panic move. And Chosen One, you need to recognize that fear and loyalty wear very different shoes. Loyalty stands with you in the fire. Fear runs to your side only when it sees the fire headed in its direction. These people aren't stepping up because they've seen the light. They're stepping up because they've seen the consequences coming. Someone with real reach has entered the conversation, and the fear is real now. Not moral, not empathetic, just survival-based. They're scared of being called out, scared that their name might be listed next, scared that their silence will be interpreted correctly as complicity, because that's exactly what it was. You were never just attacked by your enemies. You were betrayed by the ones who called themselves unbiased, the ones who didn't want to take sides. Let's call it what it really is, cowardice disguised as diplomacy. They didn't stay out of the drama, they stayed out of the truth. And now that the truth is trending, they're suddenly passionate about standing with you. Cute. But Chosen Ones, listen carefully. You owe them nothing, not your space, not your trust, not your forgiveness wrapped in a second chance. Their silence cost you more than they will ever admit. And now that things are shifting, they want to reap benefits from a battle they never helped you fight. Let them watch. From the sidelines. That's where they chose to be when it mattered most. And yes, it's tempting to believe the sudden support, especially when it comes with kind words, public shares, or that classic, "I've always admired how strong you are." But strength isn't validated by applause, it's validated by presence, and they weren't present when it counted. You were out there, standing alone in the chaos, holding your truth like a shield, while they sat comfortably in silence, waiting to see which side would win. And now that you're rising, now that someone with real power is calling out the lies they once laughed along with, they're changing sides with the same energy they used to avoid accountability. Don't get it twisted. This is not an awakening. This is damage control wearing a friendly face. Their version of support is nothing more than fear of being caught on the wrong side of history. Because here's what they see now. Your truth is becoming public record. Your story isn't just believable anymore, it's undeniable. And they're realizing that if they don't move fast, they'll be remembered as part of the problem. But let's make something clear. You're not here to help them sleep better at night. You're not their redemption tour. You're not their clean slate. And you're definitely not their shortcut to being seen as the good ones. You didn't get here because of them. You got here in spite of them. So don't hand them a front row seat now that the storm has passed. Let them stay uncomfortable. Let them deal with the consequences of their inaction. Let them sit with the weight of all the times they could have spoken up and didn't. Because the truth is, they didn't defend you when it cost something, so they don't deserve to benefit now that it's safe. Chosen One, keep your head high, keep your circle tight, and don't confuse noise with support. Some people are only loud when they're scared. Let them be loud over there. You've got better things to focus on, and we're just getting started. Number 8. The truth didn't leak. It detonated while they were laughing. The truth didn't just show up. It waited until they were loud enough to embarrass themselves. Let them talk long enough, and they'll build the stage for their own collapse. My dear Chosen Ones, there's a reason everything exploded when it did. Not a second earlier, not during your darkest nights, not while you were crying behind closed doors or silently carrying what they never had the strength to face. No, the truth didn't whisper into the void of your suffering. It waited. It waited until the lights were on, the crowd was watching, and your enemies were performing like they'd already won the show. Then, right on cue, everything flipped. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't random timing. It was tactical, precise, cold-blooded and clean. The kind of exposure that doesn't just correct a lie, it strips it bare in front of every single person who helped keep it alive. And that's what they weren't ready for. They were too busy bragging, too loud with their lies, too sure they had fooled everyone. They didn't just tell stories, they built reputations around those stories. They smiled in your absence, laughed in your struggle, and flexed their fake version of events like it was untouchable. But timing, oh, chosen one, timing knew exactly when to strike. Let me say it this way, the truth has no desire to show up when you're still bleeding. That's not where it does its best work. The truth waits until your enemies are sitting on their thrones of arrogance, completely convinced the spotlight will never touch them. That's when it hits, not in whispers, in explosions. And when it does, it doesn't just reveal facts, it dismantles illusions. The same people who once nodded along with the lies, who repeated the gossip, who refused to ask questions out of convenience, they're silent now. Not because they didn't know better before, but because now they've seen too much to pretend otherwise. That's what makes this flip so satisfying. They didn't just get exposed, they got exposed publicly, in full view, in front of the people they spent so much time performing for. And you didn't have to post about it. You didn't have to gather evidence. You didn't have to beg for an audience. The truth invited everyone to the show and dropped the curtain without warning. Understand this, chosen ones. It wasn't about justice alone. It was about impact. They needed to be seen, not by you, but by the ones who once blindly believed them. That's the real power move. Because now, nobody can unsee it. The screenshots, the contradictions, the patterns, it's all there. And guess what? The mask didn't just slip, it shattered. And the pieces, they're cutting through every fake narrative they ever stitched together. People are pulling back now, not because they suddenly gained morals, but because their hands are too dirty to stay in the room. They're deleting messages, distancing themselves, panicking in silence. Because the truth didn't just correct the story, it burned the whole script to the ground. So if you ever asked, why didn't it happen sooner? Here's your answer: because truth doesn't show up to comfort. It shows up to crush. It doesn't rush in on your timeline. It walks in when their pride is at its peak, when their lies have gained the most momentum, and then it shatters it all like glass under pressure. And the best part? You didn't have to move a muscle. You weren't in the comments. You weren't clapping back. You weren't explaining yourself to people who already made up their minds. You were healing, evolving, growing quietly while the truth was getting louder on its own. And when the flip came, you didn't have to lift a single word. They did all the exposing themselves. That's the irony. They kept talking, kept performing, kept selling their version of reality, and the whole time they were laying the groundwork for their own undoing. It wasn't sabotage, it was self-destruction. All the truth had to do was show up and hit play. Now, the same people who once celebrated your downfall, they're watching replays of the disaster they co-signed and the chosen one they laughed at. You're sitting in peace while the noise they created is tearing their own image apart. So let this be a reminder, your timing is coming too. If you're still in that stage of silence, of waiting, of watching them perform, hold tight. Because when your truth arrives, it won't need help. It won't whisper. It won't ask for permission. It'll wait until the room is full and then drop with force. They thought they had the final say. They thought the story was closed. But now, that same stage they used to drag your name, it's burning under their feet, and every single person they fooled is watching the smoke rise. Stay patient, chosen ones. Keep your energy clean, your boundaries high, and your peace protected. Because when it flips, and it always flips, everyone will see what they tried to hide. And trust me, that view is worth the wait. Let's keep going. There's more coming. Number 9, you never needed to argue. Your endurance said it all. You never had to prove a thing because you were the walking evidence the whole time. They demanded receipts, but your survival was the headline. Your life was the proof they hoped no one would notice. Let me speak directly to you, chosen one. You were never loud. You didn't drag names, didn't run to gossip, didn't throw a single punch. And yet, somehow, your silence screamed louder than their entire smear campaign. That's the part they never prepared for. They expected rage. They wanted it, actually. They poked, baited, provoked, not to resolve anything, but to pull you into their mess and frame you as unstable. They needed you to lose control, because without that, their lies had no legs. And still, you refused. You let the chaos swirl while you stood still. You let the false accusations fly while you held your ground. You could have responded, exposed, retaliated, and no one would have blamed you. But instead, you chose something far more dangerous to your enemies. You chose composure. Because the truth is, chosen one, you were never required to perform to be believed. That's the lie they sold to everyone. That unless you gave an impassioned defense, unless you screamed your innocence, unless you produced proof on demand, you must have been guilty. But you knew better. You knew that real power doesn't chase approval. Real truth doesn't need a stage. They never wanted to understand you. Let's be real. Some people don't ask for clarity. They ask for weakness. They ask you to explain yourself just so they can twist the explanation. So you didn't play. You didn't dance for their cameras. You didn't hand them your emotional reactions on a silver platter. You were the calm in the storm while they were out here trying to manufacture hurricanes. And now? Now the silence they mocked has turned into a weapon they can't unhear. That stillness you held with so much grace has turned into the biggest threat to their entire storyline. Because people are watching now. Not just people, the right people. People who have been observing, quietly gathering context, connecting the dots. And guess what? They're speaking now. Someone just stepped into the picture who isn't asking questions anymore. They're making statements. They're not confused. They're not divided. They've seen the contrast. Your steadiness versus their chaos. Your consistency versus their instability. They know the difference between someone keeping peace and someone trying to fake power. And here's what you need to understand. Chosen one. You were never the one on trial. Their behavior was. And your silence was the spotlight that revealed it. Your refusal to stoop to their level made their level visible to everyone else. Every time you stayed grounded, it made their outbursts louder. Every time you held your tongue, their manipulation got clearer. They thought they won because you didn't defend yourself. But they were wrong. What they didn't know was that your quiet was collecting interest. Your stillness was stacking receipts. And now, someone else is cashing in. Someone with a voice they can't silence. Someone with influence they can't dodge. Someone who saw it all and is finally saying, that one? Yeah, they were never the problem. Now let's talk about power. Real power isn't in proving. It's in being undeniable. And you, chosen one, are undeniable. They tried to erase your narrative and instead they highlighted it. They tried to break you down quietly, but your endurance built you up publicly. You didn't need to clap back, because every move you didn't make is now being interpreted correctly by someone who never bought into the lies in the first place. You see, when you're chosen, you don't chase truth. You embody it. And people can only ignore that for so long. Eventually, someone watches long enough to see the patterns. They start to see you not just as a target, but as the constant, the one who never shifted, even when the pressure mounted. And when that realization hits the right person, everything flips. Your enemies are watching that flip happen in real time. The shift isn't gentle, it's loud, it's public, and it's irreversible. And what's worse for them, you didn't have to orchestrate a single thing. You just existed. You kept your integrity while they chased influence. You kept your peace while they chased attention. And now your name is being cleared in rooms you didn't even step foot in. Let this be your reminder. You were the proof all along. You were never required to prove what was already evident in how you lived. And the world is finally catching up to what you always knew. Not because you screamed it, but because you stood still long enough for the truth to rise on its own. They thought your silence made them safe, but it only made their lies echo louder. And now every echo is bouncing back with consequences. So to the chosen ones who've ever questioned if their restraint mattered, hear this. Your stillness became your statement. Your quiet became the evidence. And now you're not just being heard. You're being believed. Let's keep going. The shift isn't finished. And that's just the beginning, chosen one. When everything flips overnight, the truth doesn't whisper, it shouts. Let this remind you, you were never losing. The world was just late catching up to who you've always been. If this hit your spirit like confirmation, don't just scroll, respond. Smash that like, hit subscribe, and drop 77 in the comments if you know that your silence was never weakness, it was proof. And don't keep this to yourself. Share this with someone who's been silently surviving. Their moment of reversal might be just one truth away. Let's keep rising together.